Join us as we look at the rise of rugby in Japan. Some records show that rugby was already in Japan as early as 1866 in Yokohama by foreign servicemen at the army barracks. It was first introduced to the locals when Japanese-born Edward B. Clark brought it back after studies at Cambridge University in 1899. He introduced it to students at Keio University, where he was an English instructor. Keio University's first match was played against the only formally registered Japanese rugby team, Yokohama Foreigners Club. The Foreigners Club won the game in a one-sided 35-5 victory. Japan's first rugby football championship was held in 1918. A few years later, they held their first international test in 1923 against Canada. Rugby continued to grow in the nation, as Clark taught it as a sport that stood for a strong spirit of fair play and gentlemanship, something that Japanese culture holds in high regard. Rugby would continue to grow in popularity over the years. Fast forward to 2015. The Rugby World Cup was being held in England. Everyone was expecting teams like England, South Africa, and the returning champs New Zealand to do well. But nobody was expecting rank outsiders Japan to be involved in what the BBC called arguably the biggest upset in rugby union history. Japan was pooled with Samoa, Scotland, South Africa, and the United States. Japan's first pool match was against South Africa, the overwhelming favourites of the pool, if not the whole tournament. The strong South African squad consisted of speedster Habana, strongman Victor Matfield, and inspirational leader Pieter-Steph du Toit, to name a few. All historically great rugby players. What was about to take place shocked the rugby world. South Africa struck first with a try in the 18th minute. Japan answered back with a try to Skipper Leach at minute 30. South Africa would go on to score 3 more tries and Japan would score another, while both sides conceded penalties. With less than a minute on the clock, and South Africa leading by 3 points, the Brave Blossoms were awarded a very easy shot at goal. Instead of taking the safe option, which would have guaranteed them the most famous of draws, the Red and White Hoops went for the jugular, like the brave samurai warriors they were. Scrum was the call made by the skipper. This was no minnow team from 20 years ago. These were not mere giant killers, these were giants. Equal among men, Japan was serving notice to the world. The Brave Blossoms were writing their own story for history to be read. It was called The Miracle of Brighton. After multiple phases of attack and equal portions of box lockdown defence, Kern Hesketh made it across the line to score the winning try for Japan in the 84th minute.
For Japan, one of the most famous victories in the history of sport, I'd go as far as saying, not just in the game of rugby union. And victory it will be for the Cherry Blossoms.
The voice of rugby, the mercurial Gordon Bray, described it as a story of an underdog achieving an impossible result against the odds.
I'm not surprised. We came out here to do a job, and we've been training. Like I said, we've been training for this for the past 4 years. So I know the whole world is surprised, but in our camp, we always knew that we could do it.
As if this victory wasn't enough, another story of triumph was being written. Ayumu Goromaru, who was named as fullback in the 2015 RWC Dream Team, had become an overnight sensation in Japan for single-handedly contributing to a massive 24 of their 34 points. Many young fans mimicked his famous clasp hands Johnny Wilkinson lookalike kicking stance. Although man of the match Goromaru fought bravely on the field, off the field overcome with emotion, he could barely utter a word at the post-match interview. By now, it was safe to say rugby fever had officially gripped the proud nation. Cult hero Goromaru had overnight achieved superstar status as a rugby player in his beloved homeland. Losing only to Scotland, Japan, by the way of countback, finished third in the pool and were not advanced to the quarters, but had secured their spot for the 2019 World Cup, which they were going to host in 4 years' time. Was the 2015 miracle a fluke win? To find out, let's look ahead 4 years. Hosting the 2019 World Cup was considered a great honour for Japan, but it was not without its challenges in the lead-up to winning the bid some years earlier. There had been questions of whether Japan deserved to be awarded hosting rights. Soon after the miracle in Brighton, those doubts were brought to an abrupt end. Japan had rightly put the world on notice that they deserved a chance to be on the world rugby map. During the year, final preparations for the World Cup were falling into place, and the excitement in the nation was at fever pitch. Every single jersey across the land had been sold out, as anticipation of another successful Japan Rugby World Cup outing was at an all-time high. The cherry blossoms were grouped with rugby giants Ireland, physically intimidating Samoa, and an experienced Scotland side together with Russia. Everybody knew who would make it out of the pool. Japan, however, being on their home ground, had other ideas. Once again, they proved to be the surprise package. After defeating Russia, Japan went on to prevail in a shock win over Ireland by 19 points to 12. They went on to defeat Samoa 38-19 and had a tight 28-21 victory over the Scots, completing a never done before impressive 4 wins out of 4 to top their group and finally advance to the knockout stages for the first time in their history. Although bowing out to the Springboks in the quarters, Japan Rugby proved that what happened in Brighton that fateful day was no fluke. So what did they do to get here? Because just 20 years prior, their wins were few and far between, and their win-loss record was no indication of how great the future success of Japan Rugby would be. Simply, they didn't accept the status quo and continued to evolve and grow into the strong contenders they are today. Rugby has been growing in Japan on a domestic level for decades, albeit at different degrees. Most recently, however, the growth has increased tremendously, evidenced by the high-quality players that are coming in droves from overseas to play domestic rugby in Japan. Now let's take a look at the domestic rugby hotspot, Osaka. It's the most popular rugby city in Japan and is home to the famous Mecca Hanazono Stadium, which is also the home ground for the Kintetsu Liners, one of Japan's most traditional teams. This is also where the high school championships are hosted every year. People from all over Japan come to watch. According to the chairman of the Japanese Rugby Football Union, Kensuke Iwabuchi, our fans appreciate rugby's values of integrity, passion, solidarity, discipline and respect. Values which Japanese people aspire to as individuals and within wider society. This grassroots movement instills a love for rugby by starting the players at a young age and growing them up through the system. Indeed, Japan has accepted rugby as its own and integrated it into their culture. Japan has the 4th largest population of rugby players in the world, with over 120,000 players and an incredulous 3,500 teams. The country has become rugby mad and boasts some of the best fans in the game, following their team wherever they venture to, supporting them in full force. With continued investment into the local game and with big name players constantly making the move to Japan, how much further Japanese rugby will rise is anyone's guess. Other nations have struggled to grow the game locally, but Japan is certainly not one of those and in fact is defying the current trends. The Japan rugby fans are highly knowledgeable of the intricacies and complexities of the rugby game, and they know and appreciate star quality. Recently, Aaron Smith and Beauden Barrett, amongst a smattering of other former All Blacks, have travelled north for the big bucks that Japan rugby offers. This is not a new phenomenon. One only has to look at the big Fijian national, Michael Leach, who has graced domestic rugby in Japan for at least 10 years, culminating as an 80-plus Test veteran of his adopted homeland of Japan.
半端ないエフォート、勇気あるマインドセット、and then courage mindset。この2つですごく大事ね。勇気持って。
During this time, Leach has served in various capacities of leadership, most notably as captain of the 2015 World Cup team, i.e. the miracle in Brighton. A story like that of Michael Leach is not an isolated case in Japan rugby. So, more and more fans are filling up the stadiums the length and breadth of the majestic nation of Japan. As of last year, they had 750,000 fans, and this year there are already over 1 million fans so far, and the playoffs have yet to come. Japan Rugby League One is in its third year of operation and has seen continued growth since they successfully hosted the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
Japan 2019 will be remembered as probably the greatest Rugby World Cup. We've broken records at every level.
While France's top 14 is also thriving, England, Australia and New Zealand have seen better days regarding financial sustainability.